Introduce you to today's speaker, Nina Woodard, as she shares research set sail tales of experience. Nina is a senior studying biology at Andrews, and she's graduating this May. During her time at Andrews, she's had the opportunity to study at the Rosario Beach Marine Laboratory, as well as take marine science courses at Duke University. Nina is currently studying Florida manatees' teeth, and today she'll be sharing with you tales about her research and experiences. At the end of her presentation, there will be time to answer a few questions. So for those of you viewing this live, feel free to type your questions into Zoom chat or message us a Facebook comments, and we'll be sure to share your question with Nina. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Nina.
Hi, so as Laura stated, I'm Nina, and I'm currently wrapping up my senior year at Andrews University. And today I kind of just want to share with you guys my experiences at Andrews University with the biology department and research, and then also the honors department, expanding a little bit on what was already discussed in the Focus article about me earlier. And I just kind of want to share these experiences so that you guys know what's available at Andrews University, and then also how Andrews University could also get you experiences outside of Andrews University. Or if you're a student that is having a bit of a hard time really knowing what you want to do, and you feel a little stuck, possibly me sharing what I've done could help you figure out what you want to do. So yeah, let's get to it. So first, a bit about me. I have been in Berrien Springs pretty much all my life, 21 years out of the 23 years I've been alive. I went to the daycare at Andrews University. I went to Ruth Murdoch Elementary School. I went to Andrews Academy, and now I'm here at Andrews University. I've had a lot of people ask me how I ended up choosing Andrews University, especially considering a lot of people that ended up doing everything that I did in Berrien Springs usually left to kind of get out of that Berrien Springs bubble. And at some point, I definitely thought that I was going to leave this bubble, but I was a little unaware of what I was going to do leaving high school. And so I decided to originally take a year off so that I could kind of explore some of my interests and figure out what I wanted to do. And so during that year off, I just kind of looked up schools, and there was a lot of great options, but Andrews University had a little bit of everything. They had psychology, nutrition, biology, pre-med, and me being interested in a lot of things, I didn't want to leave the area for the first time in my life, get to a school that only had one option, and then me figure out that I didn't like the school that I was at, or I felt like I was stuck in the major because they didn't have anything else for me. So I chose Andrews University because of how broad Andrews University is with their subjects and their majors. And being from the area, I already knew a little bit about the biology department and the honors department, so that's how I ended up being here. I chose to join honors because from what I heard, it really seemed to be a program that would force me to think a little harder and kind of jump out of my comfort zone. I feel like I tend to be a little shyer, or at least I feel like I used to be, and I like to stay in my comfort zone. I feel like I used to think if there's any piece of me that felt like there was going to be failure in the future, then I wanted to stay in my comfort zone. But that's not any way to live life. And I felt like the honors department would help me become more of a critical thinker and step out of that little bubble. And I feel like it has helped me get a lot of the opportunities that I have gotten now. And then I started out as a pre-med student, not really because I had any plans to go to medical school, but because that's what all of the biology students seem to be doing. So I just thought, why not? And I didn't really enjoy my classes at first, my freshman year, because I just kind of felt lost. And that kind of changed when Dr. Daniel Gonzalez from the biology department actually reached out to me about CUBA. So CUBA was part of an ecology study tour, and it was a great experience. And we studied pretty hard the first week. It was a 3-week experience. The first week where we studied, we stayed at campus at Andrews University, and we were sitting in class for 6 hours a day, and we were just going over what we would be doing in Cuba, but then also studying the ecology that we would encounter down there. And then as well as going over some of the Cuban history, just so that we could familiarize ourselves with the culture before going down there. And when we finally did get down there, we did a lot of snorkeling, hiking, birding, caving. We spoke to Cuban scientists and got to know a little bit more about the Cuban history, like in the sense of the society, but then also the natural history. And it was a great experience for me. And it was my first real trip outside of the country. So um, it was a little of a shocker for me, especially just because Cuba is a third world country. So it was a little bit more humbling. But for my first trip out of the country, I think it kind of helped prepare me for my other trips. But the thing about Cuba that really ignited or reignited my interest in marine science was probably this trip, and especially the snorkeling. I don't really know what it is about the water that I love so much, but I know I've always loved swimming and I love looking at all the beautiful creatures. I think part of it is the fact that we ourselves are humans and we live on land, and so we are a little bit more familiar with land animals that are just like us, and we know a little less about the water. And I think there's a lot of weird things in the ocean. Like there could be a weird blob and it looks pretty and colorful, and you're just kind of like, what is that? So I think because of the fact that I know a little less about marine animals, I've always just wanted to know more. But after Cuba, I ended up changing my major to just biology. Well, it was originally biology with a biomedical emphasis, but I changed it to just a biological emphasis. And then I also changed my advisor. I had asked Dr. Gonzalez while we're in Cuba if he would be willing to be my advisor so that I could have more guidance in the future for my classes, and just for the experiences that I've now received. And he ended up being not only my advisor, but just also my teacher as I've taken all of his classes so that I could learn as much about ecology or anything animal related. And then he also became my research advisor. And so, not too long after I made that switch, I ended up doing my research with him with the Florida manatees. So, for a lot of people that know me, they know that my research has been with manatees. Dr. Gonzalez's lab is an ecology and conservation lab, and there were a few of us that all had manatee projects, some with body shape and size projects, cold stress syndrome projects, and chewing rates. But my research actually had to do more with their teeth than the actual physical animal. I get a lot of questions about my experiences with the manatees, like have I gotten to go to Florida and travel and play with the manatees, or are they as cute in person as they are in pictures? But unfortunately, I haven't actually ever seen a wild manatee in person. We deal with museum specimens, so I analyze their bones. But just a little background on manatees, since I know we have some manatee lovers out there. Manatees are herbivores. They eat a variety of freshwater and marine plants, which is often why they gain the nickname sea cow. And you can find them in both freshwater and marine waters. There are currently 3 species of manatees. You have the West African manatee, the Amazonian manatee, and the West Indian manatee. The West Indian manatee is divided into Florida manatees and Antillean manatees. Most often what people have probably encountered have been the Florida manatee, just because they're what we have the easiest access to living here in the United States. But you can find manatees occupying the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean Sea, the Amazon Basin, and West Africa. For the most part, they are cryptic species. They're a little fearful of humans. They don't have any natural predators, but humans are currently their biggest threat. And so they may be a little shy, or you might not encounter them as much in the wild. It takes a lot for them to want to come up to you and be friendly, but they can be friendly, and that's why they've also been called gentle giants. They are often usually slow moving and peaceful animals, but you also might want to keep your distance just in case they become a little fearful of you and want to get away from you. But they are also currently an endangered species. So my research with manatees has to do with tooth wear and tooth function, as a dental burden could also be something that they may be having to deal with besides their other threats, such as like boating. And so what we looked at was we specifically wanted to compare the Florida manatees with the other populations, as we have most access to Florida manatees. So here we have two pictures. One's more of an animation or figure of a skull, and then the other one's actually a real picture of a manatee skull that I have taken. And something interesting about Florida manatees, or manatees in general, that people might not know is that they actually replace their teeth about 1 millimeter per month, kind of like a conveyor belt. And so for the most part, they're able to deal with a certain level of wear because they replace their teeth. They replace their teeth from the back to the front. The front tooth is usually the oldest, and then the back tooth is the newest. So as the front tooth might be the most worn down tooth just because it's old, and then that back tooth is usually a little newer, so it might not be as worn down. But some studies that me and my advisor have read indicate that Florida manatees may be experiencing a greater levels of tooth wear compared to the other three populations. And so they could be experiencing a great dental burden, which means that it might be harder for them to actually feed and gain the necessary nutrients to eat their food. Kind of a basic anatomy of a tooth is that we all have an enamel, if you recall, for basic tooth anatomy. But once a manatee wears down its enamel too far, it ends up looking like these two pictures here on the right. That's an extremely worn down tooth. And so that is kind of what we had been seeing in Florida manatees. We've been seeing that they've been experiencing a lot of wear, and a lot of wear, not just in the front with that oldest tooth, but even all the way farther in the back with the newer teeth, which means that they haven't replaced those worn down teeth yet because they're all the way spreading to the back. And so by the time that worn down tooth in the back gets to the front, they just might be having a very hard time eating. And this is kind of a yes or no question with my research. Like we were trying to figure out, are they actually wearing down their teeth more? And so with my research, we kind of found out, yes, they are. And with my research, I have gotten some other experiences. Because my research is combined with the biology department and honors department, I've had my honors deadlines and requirements as well. And so something that I have gotten to do with being part of the biology department and the honors department, and then as well as gaining a research scholarship, I was required to present at the symposium for honors. And so it was a good experience for me to get presentation skills down, especially with a poster. I've never made a poster before, and so it's a little bit more of a candid conversation with someone that decides to come up and ask me about my poster. And so it was a good experience to tell people about my research, but then also get some great skills in as well. And then I also got the chance to speak in Barcelona this past December. I did 2 speed talks, one during a Serenian symposium. It was just a little group of us that were attending the conference that were mostly just speaking about manatees. So it was like a manatee symposium, and I spoke at that. And then I also spoke at the full conference for Barcelona, the World Marine Mammal Conference. And so that was very interesting to me. And I was very blessed to have the biology department, the research department, and the honors department fund that trip. And so this is just one example of what research here at Andrews University could possibly get you as an experience outside of Andrews University, but through Andrews University. It was a very good experience for me to get to present in front of such a large group, especially with me wanting to go into research and do this for the rest of my life. I went with the rest of my lab, 3 of which, me included, all spoke about manatee research. And so that was a good experience to get to speak and then also hear other people's conferences. Not all of them being about manatees, of course, because it's all mammals, but it was a good experience for me to get to travel and then expand on my experiences. Something that has come out of my research and experiences at Andrews University have been experiences at other schools. As stated in my bio, I got to attend the Rosario Marine Laboratory through Walla Walla, Washington, which is one of our sister schools, or a school that we're partnered with. So it was kind of through Andrews University still, but I got to go to the Rosario Marine Beach Laboratory and take a marine biology class and then an environmental physiology class, which was my first experience outside of Andrews University, where I got to learn a little bit more about marine science and marine biology. Because here at Andrews University, while we have biology, we don't really have a marine science program. But something that's always been great about the biology department is that they've been very helpful in having and providing me with opportunities outside of Andrews University. And this is the first one. And so I learned a lot about different animals. We took classes, we did field research. I developed an entire research project about sea urchins, which was my first introduction into marine science, really, in a research-based setting. And we studied sea urchins and how they are affected by climate change, which is what really started my interest in climate change specifically, not just in marine organisms, but just in general. Climate change really affects our ocean at the moment, and we were just trying to see if ocean acidification is affecting our sea urchins. And that was kind of my first research experience where we didn't get the results that we wanted to, which just showed me that research doesn't always follow a straight path. Sometimes you end up with more questions than you were wanting to have originally. And so that kind of helped prepare me for my biology research with the manatees at Andrews University. Something else that I also discovered this past summer was that I got the experience to participate in the research experience for undergrads through the Maryland Sea Grant. They offer undergraduates around the country to come visit and learn from top marine scientists just about anything marine science related. It doesn't necessarily have to be biology. I was there with chemists, environmental scientists, mathematicians, engineers who have an interest in marine science. So this is just one option for anybody out here at Andrews University that might think, oh, I have to do biology to do marine science. You do not. You can kind of be in any area where you have an interest in marine science, whether you're a chemist, a mathematician, or an engineer. And here I got the experience that I needed to kind of start applying for graduate school. They helped me study for the GRE. They helped me figure out when I should take it. They helped connect me with graduate students so that I could kind of get a feel for what graduate school is like. And they helped me make a lot of good connections over the summer. And it was just a great experience to get to know more people just like me. There's not a lot of students at Andrews University that are like me that are interested in marine science. We have a lot of pre-med students, and so I've always felt a little bit left out. But it was nice to get to know more people that were just like me with the Maryland Sea Grant. And so just a little overview of what my project was about was that in Maryland, they are experiencing the fastest levels of sea level rise due to global climate change. And so in the top left picture, this is actually the city that I lived in for the summer. And you can see that they're experiencing a lot of flooding. They experience flooding almost to the point where they have to have flood days like we have snow days. Or they have to make sure that they pick up their kids at a time where the sea levels are lower so that they can go pick up their kids across the bridge before it gets too high and they can't drive to pick up their kids anymore. And flooding causes a lot of coastal erosion, as you can see in the top right corner, which was our study site for the summer. That used to be like a beach, but a lot of wave action and hurricanes knocked a lot of the trees down and eroded the sand. And so we ended up losing a lot of trees, and it's just not a safe place to really go to the beach anymore. And so we chose to use that as our study site. And something that we were exploring was creating living shorelines. If you guys have ever seen seawalls, it's a little similar to that, but we were trying to make something that's living and sustainable. Seawalls are not living, so they won't grow. But what we wanted to do was add something living to the non-living, kind of create hybrid infrastructure so that we could create something that would grow over time as sea levels continue to rise. And so what we ended up doing was creating an oyster living shoreline, which is in the bottom right corner. And so oysters will grow over time. They continue to grow on top of each other. And so the hope is that by combining oysters with the cement blocks, that they will help combat some of the effects of sea level rise. And so that's kind of what I did this summer, and that really got me into coastal restoration. And so that's what I've chosen to do for graduate school. Another experience that I got immediately after the Maryland Sea Grant was I got to go to Duke University to take marine science classes as well. Dr. Gonzalez actually found this research opportunity for me because he attended Duke University, and I think that one day he was just going through their website and he found an opportunity for 2 undergraduates at different schools, a school other than Duke University, to attend the Duke Marine Lab to take marine science classes. And so I got to take 4 marine science classes on campus, but then it also included a study tour. So I was able to go to Panama this past October to study the ecology there, and it's similar to the Cuba trip. And Duke University's classes consisted of a lot of outside work as well. We got to go on field trips. And so we did some blue crab work, which is in the top right corner. We did a lot of blue crab work because they're pretty native to North Carolina. And so it was a good opportunity for us to get to study them. And then we had a sea turtle that regularly visited our shoreline. So every day after lunch, we would go out there to check out the little baby sea turtle. And then just going on regular adventures, you'd find great creatures, which was very fun for me because I like to just walk around and see what I can find. And so we found sand dollars, we found little fiddler crabs, which is in the bottom right corner, one with the big claw, and then they have the tiny little claw as well. And then somehow we also ended up catching a porcupine fish as well. So just doing it regular everyday activities, we kind of encountered any creatures throughout that time. I also got to visit the actual main campus of Duke University because I came down there during hurricane season. So a week into my classes, me finally getting adjusted and getting my room ready, they told us that we had to leave and that we had to go to the main campus. So we had to quickly pack up and get over there, which was unfortunate, but at the same time, I really enjoyed getting the opportunity to visit the main campus and see some of the sites that everybody tells you about Duke University. So Duke University was a great opportunity for me to study marine science classes, meet new friends, make new connections, and the connections that I made at Duke University are actually what got me into my grad school that I got accepted into this past March. And so all of my experiences have provided me with some sort of connection outside of Andrews University. And I think that's really good to kind of step out of the bubble every once in a while so that you can further your career goals. But if it weren't for Andrews University, I don't think I would have also gotten any of these experiences. Here's just a little bit of my trip to Panama. We got to see the Panama Canal, one of their locks. We got to see the Miraflores locks, which was fun. We got to see a lot of the boats come through the channels, them raising the water levels and lowering the water levels to let the boats pass through. We got to go hiking. I loved getting to see the little red tree frogs, even though you really shouldn't touch them, but they're pretty cryptic. It's hard to find them. So the fact that I was able to get a close-up picture of it, I was pretty excited about. The water was beautiful. And getting to see a sloth was probably the highlight of my trip. You can't see in the picture, but it was actually holding a little baby, so we just sat and stared at that for a really long time. But getting the opportunity to go out of the country again was really fantastic for me, because I've always enjoyed studying the ecology of different areas, and then as well as get to know the culture. Something that I really hope to continue doing with my experiences here, or just after Andrews University, would be to continue traveling, to kind of get more ecology experience, but then just also learn more about the world. So it's great that I get to do that with my field of work, and it's been kind of nice that Andrews University has helped provide me with all these opportunities without me having to always foot the bill. And so, kind of just closing, what I would like to do with all of these research experiences is work on coastal restoration. Throughout my life, anybody that's been in Berrien Springs, they know that St. Joseph Beach, Silver Beach, has actually been dealing with their own issues of coastal restoration. So it's actually a little bit closer to home than I ever really even processed. We have our own coast here in Michigan, even though we might a lot of the times think that we're not anywhere near a coast. And so getting into my top school at East Carolina University, I will be doing work that will be exploring what we see here in these pictures, trying to help alleviate some of the consequences of global climate change and the sea levels rising as we're losing our coasts. So those are my future plans. And I think we can open it up to questions now.
All right, great. Thank you, Nina. Very fascinating. The first question we have is, what would you say are the biggest challenges facing the Florida manatee population today?
So I would say the biggest issue that we have with Florida manatees is human threats. Boating is one huge issue that we have with manatees, is that a lot of people don't see them. You can't usually see them in the water. They swim they swim lower, and they're huge, and so when a boat hits them, it makes quite an impact. But it could injure them or kill them. And then human activities such as like destroying their habitat to make room for more human beaches or activities. And so that's a threat to them. And then so now that we're realizing that they're experiencing this dental burden, that could also become a threat to them, as if they're not eating enough or gaining the proper nutrition, then that's just one extra threat that they could be having to deal with.
Just a reminder, if you're viewing this live on Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom, you're welcome to type in your questions and we'll pass this along to Nina. Next question is, what advice would you give to a prospective student considering studying biology at Andrews?
I think that the biggest piece of advice I would give them is that they should if they're not biology pre-med, they should definitely consider doing research. Some people end up studying biology and they're a little too late to doing research, and then they feel overwhelmed. But definitely check out the research program. They have a great research great research opportunities in the biology department with any of our biology faculty. And so I would say, even if you're not trying to go into research, research provides you with the ability to think critically. And so it might give you things that you could use in life, whether or not you're trying to pursue research or not.
Next question or comment from someone here is, my son is considering studying science at Andrews, but he's not sure what major. How easy is it to switch majors a year or two into your program?
So if he's trying to just study science, I guess, that would be in the science department. There's different levels of science. So I guess like if it was like psychology, it'd be a little harder to switch from psychology to biology. But say if you're studying chemistry or engineering or biology, the first year you're taking maybe a lot of the similar classes. Engineering students still have to take chemistry or physics, and biology students still have to take chemistry and physics. So there's a lot of overlap those first 2 years, especially the first year. So if he's not sure what he wants to do and he thinks that he might switch, at least for me, it was very easy to switch because I already took the classes for biology or just for the biological emphasis. And so really all I had to do was ask to switch, but nothing wasn't counted for. The classes that I took my freshman year still counted for my sophomore year. I didn't feel like I was doing extra work. And so if he ends up choosing chemistry but then wants to do biology, he'll still pretty much be set his freshman to sophomore year.
All right. Next question is, what would you tell someone who is deciding whether or not to join the honors program?
Ooh, so the honors program, I didn't join it for kind of like the title that some people might go for. Um, I joined because I felt like it was going to make me a better student, a better researcher, and a better just like life learner. And so um, it might not be for everyone, but if you're considering joining honors, I would say if you want to kind of get a pretty good experience outside of Andrews and get what you're paying for, I think that you could consider honors. It helped. It helped that it was a smaller class sizes. I felt like the teachers really were invested in their students because you kind of interact with these teachers like year after year. It's also a bit of a club. They have these activities that you can do. So joining honors is also like joining like a little club, and you have your own little family. And so if you're kind of wanting to join if you're wanting to attend Andrews University and you're looking for a tight knit group, like a family to join, I would consider honors. If you're wanting that help throughout your entire 4 years at Andrews University, because I felt like I had something to lean on as I needed help with anything throughout my undergrad career. They were there to answer questions, even if they didn't know anything about my major. Dr. Pittman, who is the director of the honors program, was very helpful in helping me with stuff for my research and my biology career and these experiences, even though she is not a biology teacher, just because the people in the honors department are pretty interdisciplinary. And so while they might not know anything about your major, they're really there to help you throughout your 4 years. And so I think if you want that group and that closeness to something at Andrews University, I would consider joining honors.
Next question is, where do you envision your research taking you in the future?
So I think that my research just at Andrews University has kind of taken me further than I ever thought it would. Um, what I'm going to be doing in graduate school isn't actually even really related to my research with manatees. I switched from working with mammals, and then now I'm about to do coastal restoration work. But I think that what my graduate studies will take me to in the future is hopefully being a coastal manager so that we can better take care of our coastal regions and our coastal habitats. Um, I would like to get my PhD in the future, but we'll see where that takes me. But I think that as Andrews University has helped get me into grad school, I think that it's definitely going to be that graduate school also just takes me another step further throughout just all of my career goals.
And then looks like the last question here. What impact does your research on their teeth have on manatees?
So some of the implications of my research are that um, so as manatees are herbivorous mammals, like they eat plants and everything, they need their teeth to break down that cell wall to release the nutrients. And so if their teeth are very worn down and they are not functioning, then they are not breaking down the cell wall of their plants that they're eating, which means that while they might actually ingest the plant, they're not breaking down the food. And so that means they're not getting the necessary nutrients, which means that they may essentially be starving. And so, because they're hungry and they're trying to eat more, they might spend more time eating versus spending time in other activities that could promote reproductive success. For example, manatee mothers, if they're not able to get the nutrients that they need from their food, then they might have a hard time feeding the young, which means that that baby could die. Um, And so there's just several things that could occur for a manatee if they're not eating properly. Starvation really being one of them. But then also, Florida waters, while it might not be necessarily considered cold to us, especially for anybody living in Michigan, um, it is cooler compared to the Caribbean Sea, the Amazon basin, and West Africa. And so United States waters are colder than the other waters for the other three manatee populations. And so dealing with the fact that they might be starving and then losing weight, that might not help with already experiencing cooler winter waters. And so they could also have a harder time battling cold stress syndrome as well.
Very interesting. Well, I think that's all the questions we have right now. So, Nina, thank you again so much for your time. That was great. We'd like to go ahead and invite you, all of our viewers, to join us for our next webinar, which will be on Wednesday, April 29 at 4 p.m. Eastern. This next webinar will be a mini concert presented by violinist Simon Luke Brown. Simon Luke Brown is an American violinist, composer, and conductor who is currently studying violin performance at Andrews University as a sophomore. Simon Luke Brown is the concertmaster of the Andrews University Symphony Orchestra, and his performance accomplishments include acceptance into the Aspen Music Festival, the 2019 Prague Summer Nights Festival, and being a two-time member of the National Youth Orchestra of the United States. So please be sure to join us next Wednesday to listen to Eine kleine Quarantänemusik, which translates to a little quarantine music. See you next week.